in the real world. This one is three-dimensional. The data is only two-dimensional, but it's three-dimensional because it develops in time. And it's just a 1-minute clip, which... why have I got my order wrong here? I better jump to it now that I mentioned that. So this was at TED, and this guy was talking about how the demographics, how the world has changed in the last 40 years, right? Some of you have probably seen it.
I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still two types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We stop the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but they longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here, they still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there, but not Bangladesh. It's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world.
You like that? Maybe something you've seen it, but it's just a fantastic way you're taking real world data, you know, about demographics, the size of the family, and the life expectancy. And a computer, you put it in a computer, you analyze it, and you get a dynamic view of how the world has completely changed. You know, the human experience has completely changed in 40 years. And then for the majority of the world population are now living long lives in small families, which is very different to what it looked like just one generation ago. So I think that's a great example. So let me just back up one slide here. So, you know, other examples of the kind of things you guys may want to do. Searching, of course, but also analyzing. Parametric searches, I want to find a football player, not by keywords. You know, Google is very good at finding things by keywords. But I have specific criteria. I want to know how much money they're earning, and I want to know how many goals they scored. And I want to know when their contract is finished. You know, specific parameters, this kind of advanced search, which I guess for developers we would call it a query. This is the kind of thing which Google is not good at, and which you can do very well when you have data about the real world. Enriching your app, you know, up-to-the-minute information about the locality, about what's happening, about news, bringing all of that into applications. Interoperability, dragging and dropping things between different apps. And I should mention now that with HTML5 coming, websites have much better support for drag and drop. So maybe some people want to work with that and sort of show the ability to take an object which has a unique ID and drag it from one website to another. Okay, so that's just one example. Let me skip past this. Let me, well, I'm running short on time. Let me see if there's just one or two quick questions about the vision before I talk about some more specific things. Yeah?
Yeah, first of all, you are talking about huge amounts of data. Who's going to feed it in? This is the first one. Second, what is the level of security? For example, I don't want anyone to know how much I own or how much I'm getting each year, money, or who are my relatives, because sometimes such information can fall in the wrong hands, and you know the rest of the story.
Sure. So two good questions there. I mean, although there's a lot of information, for computers nowadays it's not very much. Okay, so in my project I took data out of Freebase, and Freebase took the data from Wikipedia and other sources, and I got data on 20 million objects, you know, very quickly, and I hosted on Google App Engine, and it costs a few dollars, not tens of dollars, like a few dollars, you know. really, the amount of data is not so much, actually. Remember, we're talking about what I would call reference data. So we're not talking about your phone bill or your bank account, which should stay private. But we're talking about people, relationships, places, stuff which doesn't change every second. It changes every few hours, every few days. And this data, there's just not so much. You know, it's hundreds of millions of objects. This is easy for a computer nowadays. So it's not as much as you think. In terms of privacy, of course, yes, I mean, there is some data which doesn't belong in the public realm. Specific transactional data doesn't belong there, more reference data. But even so, you know, I have to say, of course, this is changing, right? And we all know that what used to be private 10 years ago is not private anymore. So on Facebook, on Twitter, you know, people are putting their thoughts there, they're saying where they are. So 10 years ago, I was nervous for people to know where I am or who my friends are. And now I think we have to get used to the fact that privacy is going out of fashion. So maybe your bank account won't be on the web, but everything else will be, you know, quite soon. And I think, you know, the new generation is used to this. They expect everything to be public. They don't keep many secrets. And I think it's exciting, actually. You know, that we have very transparent lives nowadays.
What about authenticity of data? How do we know that data is real versus...
Yeah, that's also, of course, a huge issue. And that's part of, actually, in the stack of the semantic web, the top level was trust. But I think we're getting, the web is getting very good at that as well, right? I mean, you go to
but when you automate it, it becomes less...
Well, you have this issue of reputation, which people share. If somebody screws you, you know, you blog about it, you Twitter about it, you give them a bad rating on eBay, you give them 1 star on Amazon, and they can't do that many times. So it's actually working very well. I mean, I personally, like many people, I have to fix that. Like many people, I buy a lot on eBay from complete strangers, and it works great. I've had, you know, mostly very good experiences. But these are complex issues, which are not. There's no, you know, solution to perfect solution.
My question is about the ontology. So first of all, how to unify the ontologies, because you may have. So you may have more than one ontology per concept.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first question. Even if you have one ontology, how can you make sure that you have the same data from 2 different sources for the same object?
Right. So absolutely. I mean, these questions that you're all asking is why this vision hasn't fully happened yet, right? Why it's happening in many stages, because there are complex issues of merging data and data quality and data reputation and the volume of the data and the privacy. So there are all these issues. But, you know, what happens, of course, is that consensus develops. And this is what always happens. You know, there's a famous saying about somebody said that they love standards because there's so many of them, right? And this is the same here. There are too many standards. But over time, you know, the consensus develops around the standard. And I think this is a process which happens very well. You know, when electricity was first introduced to America, there were 2 types of plugs. Okay? There were 2 types of plugs. One was from Thomas Edison, it gave you DC. And the other one was from Westinghouse, I think, and it gave you AC. And when you bought a fan, you know, or a light, you had to choose which plug it would have. So, and now we take it for granted that at least in one country, at least, there's a standard plug in the wall, and you buy something in the shop, you know you can plug it in. So eventually consensus develops, and I think that's a process which happens. But of course, you know, it is an issue, and I'm going to show you some examples. There are quite a lot of sort of partial standards already developing. One interesting company which,
about the essence of this reality computing. I'm not a developer, so I can dream. I don't know the limitations of the development. But my feeling is that it's a continuation of more of what we have. I mean, you talk about the unique IDs, but I have a unique ID. I am Ariel, and I have all kinds of qualities and DNA and all stuff. But here we again translate it into what in a way that the computer, I mean.
Right. It's about making the unique ID understandable for the computer.
Yeah, I mean the attitude. Maybe we can test another attitude, not that making ourselves intelligible to the computer, but the computer understands us. I mean, you understand the difference?
Well, I think, you know, I think that's right, and it's sort of a give and take which happens. I mean, let's take an example. So you know that you're a unique person, right?